I welcome you on behalf of our board of directors and those on today's program who will speak to a very important theme, the path forward for unity, equality, and humanity. It's now my pleasure to introduce our host and MC for the day, Annisa Karim. Annisa?
Hi, everybody. This is a Facebook Live event and a Zoom call. So if you are on our Zoom call, please make sure to have your microphones off. My name is Annisa Karim, and I am welcoming you today to the rally of the Women's March Fort Myers. We'd love to gather together and celebrate our accomplishments and talk about what we need to continue to do to see unity, equality, and humanity in our community. But we know we can't be together in a physical space today, right? Yesterday in Lee County, we recorded that the pandemic has taken 500 people. And we know that from March to October, it took 7 months to get the deaths from the pandemic to go from 0 to 500. But in just 3 months, we went from 500 to 750 people killed in our community. That's a 50% increase in 3 months. So today we have to meet virtually. So friends, before we start today, I'd like to have all of us think about the consequence of this moment. And I'd like to take a moment of silence and reflection for those we have lost and the work ahead of us. So let's take a moment of silence. Thank you. We have a wonderful morning ahead of us today, and to start off our program, we have with us our very own Ryleigh from Fort Myers. Ryleigh is a 20-year-old performer and an independent artist. She will be performing for us this morning, America the Beautiful, to start off our rally. And you can find Ryleigh and her music by going to @musicbyryleigh on any social media platform, or by visiting www.ryleighmusic.com. So Ryleigh, please get us going this morning.
Thank you, Annisa. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here, and I hope you enjoy my rendition of America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of gray, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet whose stern impassioned shreds a thoroughfare for free. everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of this rally and have a lovely day. Thank you so much.
Ryleigh, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for making the time to be with us this morning and for providing us with a beautiful start to our rally. We have a fantastic program ahead of you today. Our rally today is about our path forward in unity, equality, and humanity. And so today we have with us some amazing speakers. We have Connie Bennett-Martin, Chantel, Rhodes, Councilwoman Darla, Bonk, and Jacquelyn McMiller. We also have more music today from Wenz. So I certainly hope that you will enjoy our program this morning. You know, in 1957, Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King taught us that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And this past Wednesday, Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman reminded us that there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it. So really, that is our challenge, right? That is our challenge, to be that light. So today, Women's March Fort Myers presents our virtual rally, our path forward in unity, equality, and humanity. We believe in the American dream, and we have to remember that the immigrants to this country, the people that founded this country was built on the backs of indigenous people, on the backs of slaves, and on the backs of immigrants. And together, our path forward is as a community of one. The American dream is that we can actually have the equality and the freedom to have success and to allow our children the same. And so we have to know that honest work, making sure that we are responsible for our lives and our community is important in moving forward. So today we are focusing on addressing key issues that will lead to the success of our community, our state, and our nation. Those issues are implementing a $15 minimum wage. We need to make sure that everybody that is working is paid a living wage. Healthcare for all. Healthcare is a right, and as human beings, we should be able to take benefit of medical science. And we also want to talk today about racial justice, economic justice, environmental justice, and social justice. The passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, hopefully we will finally have a ratified Equal Rights Amendment in our country. Affordable housing and childcare, and protecting our water and our environment. So I am this morning going to turn over the program to our wonderful speakers. And hopefully with our rally today, our questions on Facebook, our questions on our chat today, we can come together and talk about some of the issues we really have to solve as we move forward in this community, in the state, and in this nation. So our first speaker today is Connie Bennett-Martin. And Connie will speak to us today about protecting our future for generations to come. Connie?
Thank you, Annisa. Good morning. My name is Connie Bennett-Martin, and I am incredibly honored to be here today and speak with you. As a lifelong resident, I'm a community advocate, ran for Fort Myers City Council, and I work for the Girl Scouts of Gulf Coast, Florida. I'm committed to our community, and I'm on a few boards that are dear to my heart: the Calusa Nature Center and Planetarium, Women for a Better Lee, and Fort Myers Women's March. We are here today to celebrate, to ignite the passion and excitement building up in all of us. And I hope today that you find your path for your passion. And I'm inspired to share with you two things that are incredibly important to me: protecting our environment and shaping our future by empowering our girl leaders of tomorrow. Over the last few days, the Biden-Harris White House has shared their plans to restore America as a champion for women and girls. With the pandemic crushing women in particular, the incoming administration has announced the formation of the White House Gender Policy Council, and nothing could be better to create that level playing field for all. This office is going to provide government-wide focus on uplifting the rights of women and girls in the United States and around the world. We are finally moving in a direction of equality. And this Thursday, the first bipartisan legislation will introduce for the 117th Congress a joint resolution to remove the deadline to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. Ratification of the ERA would expressly prohibit discrimination on a basis of sex in the US Constitution. I cannot believe it has taken so long, and the ERA is something we still have to fight for, but it's finally happening. This is a historic and monumental step forward that women should have equal rights under our Constitution. We are reshaping America so that our daughters and our granddaughters may never know what it's like for a woman not to have equal rights. We need you to not wait for someone else to lead. We need you to step up and speak up. We can't wait while our legislator and leaders get the ball rolling. It's not up to them to make the difference right here. It's dependent on you and your actions. Our young girls are always watching. They are always learning by your actions and the actions of others. They truly are the future leaders of tomorrow, and it is our job to lay that groundwork so that they understand the importance and the power of their actions. They have seen a lot in their short lives, and they've seen some astonishing things over the last few months. And I implore you to let them watch the news, let them ask questions, form their own opinions, guide them to think about long-term solutions and about repercussions of their actions. Every opportunity is a learning opportunity. Take them on a hike or on a walk along a beach so that they can remember what nature looks like. I know many of us remember the clean and clear beaches and parks from when we were children. And many of us remember Lakes Park, or as we knew it, the rock pits, and how pristine the water used to be. That was before development crowded in. That was before construction and road runoff contaminated the waters. If we don't want for our environment and our Mother Earth to at least be as clean for us, for our children, as it was for us. We want them to have a better tomorrow. If we work together and we put protections in place, we truly can have America the Beautiful for generations to come. I have faith in the new administration and that they will set right a few of the restrictions and regulations that have been removed over the last few years and endanger our environment. But right here and right now, there are things that you can do. Our waterways and our rivers have the right to exist without being polluted. Lee County citizens have the right to clean water. We haven't established a rights of nature here in Lee County yet. So for now, nature needs you. Nature has the right to exist, to thrive, to regenerate, and to be restored. And people have the right to clean water and a healthy environment. Our county and municipal governments need to invest in our environment rather than the short-term enrichments of developers. Your voice and your passion, coupled with like-minded friends, can help remove the corrupting influence of money over our government decisions. We do not need to be construction dependent. We need to be community dependent. And that starts with you and your decisions and your passion and your drive. I encourage all of you to find a waterway, a wetland, or a green space in your community that means something to you and own it. Make it part of your life. Visit it, care for it, clean it up, take photos, flood Facebook with photos, share it with your friends, and bring our girl leaders of tomorrow so they can enjoy it now. The most importantly, speak up when you see your city or your county developing areas that could destroy it. Go to the meetings, ask difficult questions, hold them accountable to answer and to keep their promises. It is too easy to drive past those big Z zoning signs and do nothing. Those signs are a giant flag that something is going to change. Some change is good, some change is necessary, but it's not at the expense of crippling our environment and destroying our legacy. It is too easy to do nothing, but if you could take like-minded friends and bring those friends to speak up at the city and county meetings, you can make a difference. We are making a difference. We will be heard. We are fierce and great things are rarely easy, but we need you to be part of the we so that we can make a difference right here and right now. I hope I have inspired you to take some action. My life has been dedicated to the pursuit of a passion, and that's to make this world a better place. With all of my heart, I believe in putting yourself out there. I believe in raising your voice up for what's important. The best time to take an action was about 20 years ago. The second best time is right here and right now. Thank you.
Connie, thank you so much for inspiring us with our first speech this morning. It is true that each of us has to take responsibility for what our future looks like. And we know that right here in Florida, the environment is the economy. They are not opposing forces. And so the environment provides for us clean air and clean water. And it actually provides our amazing economy as well. We need to keep that in mind if we want to be a successful community into the future. So thank you so much for your inspiring words this morning. We're looking forward to having you on our panel discussion later today. Our next speaker this morning is an amazing young lady, Chantel Rhodes, and her speech this morning is entitled, "The Everyday Protest, Your Lifestyle is a Movement."
Thank you, Annisa, and thank you, everyone. I'm so happy to be here this morning. My name is Chantel Rhodes, and I was born and raised right here in Fort Myers, Florida. Went away to school, went away to college, lived in Tampa, lived in Atlanta, Georgia, where I studied social work and practiced activism there. I even went away to live in China for a couple of years, and now I am back home in my hometown of Fort Myers, Florida. Myself, along with Lisa Shama and Napa Peacock, formed the Peaceful Protest of Lee County group. We basically wanted to respond to some of the injustices that we saw taking place throughout the year 2020. Now, as you all know, 2020 brought us tremendous grief and strife. Not only were we faced with the unpredictable woes of a global pandemic, the United States also at that time responded to yet another brutal slaying of an unarmed Black man. Of course, by now everyone knows his name, George Floyd. During that time, Southwest Florida made us so proud. Southwest Florida rose to the occasion, and we began to protest the gross acts of violence that America was committing against her own citizens. We stood with men and women all over the world to call out police brutality. We marched, we chanted, we interviewed, and we captured the attention of those who normally wouldn't ponder the idea that these great United States of America still has a problem with race. So since the summer of 2020, I've been faced with a particular question over and over again. That question is, well, what will you do now that the protests have ended? They wanted to know if we would return to attitudes of complacency or carelessness. But my answer has been consistent across the board. I've told people the protests have not ended, they've just taken on a different form. And the protest that I'm talking about is the everyday protest. I just want to remind everybody this morning not to underestimate your unique ability to allow each and every day of your life to be a call for action. Your lifestyle in and of itself can create a ripple effect of transformation throughout the entire earth. Everyday actions can be used to get the word out. They could be used to signal dissent. They could be used to highlight the hypocritical nature of the repressive authority. The everyday protest can look like making efforts to have conversation with those who are of a different hue than you. Learning the plight and predicament of others. It's just as important as learning and studying and being able to articulate our own plight and predicament. It's called justice, not just us. The everyday protest can be as simple as challenging those slick and subtle remarks that are made in the workplace, the ones that are so slick that you accidentally laugh and grin before realizing that they are actually offenses. Even the simple act of wearing a mask in this day and age can be a form of protest, since there are still so many who refuse to do it in order to keep their fellow Americans safe. The everyday protest is what gives confidence to those around us who are still trying to figure out where they stand. They're still trying to figure out and determine their own convictions. The everyday protest is the ultimate form of truth to power. I remember when I first became a social worker, they would tell us that there are two types of leaders in this world. You have leaders that are the thermometers, and you have the ones that are the thermostats. Now we know with thermometer, it basically will tell us what the temperature is like. If it's hot, it'll simply say that it's hot. If it's cold, it will simply say that it's cold. The thermostat, on the other hand, performs the action to regulate the environment, keeping the room at its desired set points, making those small adjustments to control the environment. Those small adjustments are the everyday protests that I'm talking about. And each and every one of you, my friends, are the thermostats. The everyday protest is not just about challenging the establishment. I know it's important for us to march and to call out those who are oppressing the most vulnerable in our society. But everyday protest also looks like empowering and uplifting the woman next to you. It's not just about seeking to change, but it's also seeking to serve, seeking to understand, seeking to exercise moments of empathy and compassion for one another. So I just want to remind you, my dear friends who are assembled here today, do not miss your opportunity to practice resistance because you're waiting on the next big protest. Do not miss your opportunity to stand for truth and justice and equality because you're waiting for the next meet and greet. Don't wait for a flyer telling you when, where, who, and how. This is ours to do together, and this is ours to do each and every day of our lives. I don't care if you work at McDonald's. Be the Martin Luther King of that McDonald's. While you're passing out fries, pass out hope, pass out inspiration, pass out love and encouragement. And also in the spirit of Dr. King, everyone can be great because everyone can serve. Thank you all for having me, and God bless you all.
Chantel, thank you so much. That was amazing, very inspirational. I certainly will do my best to be a thermostat every day. But we're going to continue to need people like you to inspire us and to lead and to remind us what is actually important, that our community coming together is the important part so we can all be successful together, regardless of color or creed or religion or anything that separates us. We are one community together. And so next, we'd like to introduce to you, some of you already probably know Annie Wenz, but Annie Wenz is an amazing performer. She's not only an amazing musician, but she's also a poet and a human rights activist, and we feel honored that she has made time to be with us today. So Annie, please enlighten us with one of your songs.
Thank you. Thank you all so very much. I'm so inspired. Before I play this song, just a few words. I spent many years working as a psychiatric nurse, a supervisor at a clinic, and I often used my music to bring people together. And my music got busy, so I put the nursing aside. But I've had the honor and privilege of traveling around the world and using music as a tool at festivals and events and youth camps to teach folks that we have more in common than not, and using art as a tool. And one of the places I traveled was Pakistan after an earthquake. I was a diplomatic guest, and I was invited to do PTSD work with my fellow medical worker, a psychiatrist who also was into music. And there's reference to that in this song, and it was just about, the whole mission was about bringing people together. When the walls crumbled down and the fires torched the hills and the tornadoes spun and the floodgates just spilled, no one noticed our hats were some red and some blue. We held up all who reached out, 'cause that's what angels do. Neath the crescent moon flag, thousands lost in that quake. We were warned, please don't go, such a dangerous place. We all bowed and we prayed. We all cried and we grieved. No one there stopped to ask what the other believed. Unquestioning, we spread our wings. We love, gather pieces. We close our eyes and reach without even asking. In the end, we're only fragile hearts and hopes. In the end, we're all braver angels than we know. We hurt, we laugh, we dance, we cry, we fear, we fall. Together we rise in a refugee camp. We just went there to sing. All they knew was to fear all that's different in me. But they clung to our necks with the tiniest hands. They sang back, we'll always love you. Please don't let this end. Unquestioning, we spread our wings. We love, gather pieces. We close our eyes and reach without even asking. In the end, we're only fragile hearts and hopes. In the end, we're all braver angels than we know. In the end, we're all braver angels than we know.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
We need to seek inspiration in the words of people, but also through music and through art, so that we can keep whole and keep strong, so that we can, we can fight for a better tomorrow. And so that was beautiful. Thank you so much. We really loved it. We are honored this morning to have a newly elected councilwoman with us. Councilwoman Darla Bonk will speak to us now about her vision for the path forward. Councilwoman Bonk, if you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you all so much, Annie. That was great. That was wonderful. And what an honor to be here among such incredible people. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. I've lived in Fort Myers most of my life. Grew up here. My dad's a pastor in town, retires this year. So we're celebrating that. Newly elected council person. I'm also a business owner. 78% of our staff is from diverse backgrounds, and we are very proud of that. And I also am a host of a podcast called On Your Way. And I wanted to come from just a little bit of a different place today. I didn't have a title for this speech. I just wanted to really kind of just share my heart with you all and open up a dialogue as we keep moving forward and head into the panel portion. But unexpected kindness is the most powerful, least costly, and most underrated agent of human change. And as I think about the events that have already unfolded this year, as well as those last year, Chantel highlighted those, I found myself questioning, how do we find hope in the intellectual, cultural, and political realities of our day? Rodney King asked in 1992, can we all get along? And here we are almost 30 years later, asking the same question. Who are we and what have we become? What are we to do with our time left here on earth, the place all of us, each and every one of us, call home? The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of religions, ideologies, economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of a civilization, every king and peasant, every rich and homeless person, people in love, every mother and father, every hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every celebrity, every dictator, and every saint and sinner in the history of our species has lived here on earth, the place we all call home. We share a commonality that will never escape us. This is our only home. And regardless of those ideologies and beliefs or experiences, we often spend so long searching for common ground across deep and often very painful experiences to serve as the foundation to begin to heal. But it's actually the existence, and often characterized more by the difference and the disagreements than by unity. Humility, patience, and tolerance are three simple yet heavy words. Humility, patience, and tolerance. We demonstrate a principled empathy in which we speak the truth in love. The ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes requires that humility, and the impetus for doing so requires patience, rooted in hope, and tolerance, grounded from a place of love. I'm a woman of faith, and for me and the principles of my faith, I believe they can be shared and adopted, even if you don't believe the same way I do. And that goal is to be shaped and reshaped into people whose every thought and action is characterized by faith, hope, and love, and who then speak and act in the world with that humility, patience, and tolerance. We must share the mantra to first seek to understand and then to be understood. Seeking to understand another viewpoint or thought, even though you disagree, allows the other person to know you are willing to listen and to hear. What it really means is that you're willing to see that person. It means that when we look past the rhetoric and past the venom, we can remember we are a world of people. It allows us to perhaps shatter some of the ice around our hearts and uncover the why behind that viewpoint. What if, in listening first and understanding why someone sees something opposite from you, you are then able to share your viewpoint because you were willing to listen to them. Often I enjoy talking to people who do not share my religious beliefs. I'm actually fascinated with other religions and why people live their life according to them. Listening to their views and beliefs doesn't negate mine. I am secure enough in what I believe and think that I don't have to dismiss those beliefs and thoughts of others in order for mine to stay true. I'm a bridge builder, and in listening to them and respecting their viewpoint, it allows us to come together and reason with one another to find ways to live together on this earth, the place we all call home. There is evil in the world, no question. Throughout history, people have stood up to that evil and prevailed. There are those who will never see things any other way. There will be people who will cast judgment based off this or that, and that will never be okay. But what if in your ability to show grace, and what if in your ability to show compassion, you overlook that ignorance and intolerance, and we begin to show humility and patience and tolerance, not tolerance of a belief or of a view, tolerance that everyone is human, and as long as we all have air in our lungs, we all have an opportunity to change and to grow and to learn. What if in your ability to break through the tension and to help someone heal, they begin to see you and people like you in a way they were never willing to do so before? We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there is room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be beautiful, but in many cases, yes, we have lost the way. But we cannot lose hope. We cannot lose faith in humanity. We must not become cynical. We must remember our triumphs through history and the power of the human spirit. Look for the good in humanity. Look for the hope, and you will see it if you are willing to live with humility, patience, and tolerance. Don't treat people based on what they deserve or how good or bad they are. Treat people based on the kind of person you are. Simple kindness may be the most vital key to the riddle of how human beings can live with each other in peace and care properly for this place we all call Earth, the place we all call home. And I'll leave you with this, Ephesians 4:1-2. Walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love.
Councilwoman Bonk, thank you so much for your inspiring words this morning, and thank you for making the time to be with us. I love that message of humility, patience, and tolerance that leads to acceptance. It's interesting, though; it's not just in the human world, in the emotional world. It's also in the scientific world, right? So we have to listen to people with other viewpoints if we want to get to the truth, and we have to be able to at least think about how that truth might be our truth at some point. So thank you for your words, and thank you for running for office. That's something that takes a lot of courage. Connie Bennett-Martin ran for office, and you ran for office and were elected, so congratulations to you. Our next speaker also ran for office. This amazing woman, Jacquelyn McMiller, ran for the mayor of the city of Fort Myers, and it is our honor also to have her with us today. And Jacquelyn's talk is basically asking us, if not now, when? So Jacquelyn, if you would take it away.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the organizers of the Women's March of Fort Myers for inviting me here, and I am humbled to share this virtual meeting with the phenomenal women here today. My name is Jacquelyn McMiller, and in 2020, I ran for mayor of the city of Fort Myers. I'm a daughter of this city, and I am proud to be the first Black person and Black woman to win in a primary election and advance into a general election. I've been civically involved all of my life and belong to several organizations statewide and locally. However, recently, I've formed an organization of Urban Progressive Leaders Incubator Foundation, or UPLIFT. The organization's mission is to provide every person who wish to lead or become positive game changers, activists, or become politically involved an opportunity to organize and learn. My race was not easy, but I've always believed that nothing worth having is supposed to be, is it? I compared it to the pain of and joy of giving birth. I had never, ever contemplated running for office. Well, yes, I understood the verbiage and terminology since I've been civically involved for years, but so much more was learned on the job. And that's the purpose of the UPLIFT organization. There were moments that stood out that I will never, ever forget, like introducing Joe Biden at our Fort Myers virtual community conversation, introducing Amy Klobuchar, getting a call of support from former presidential candidate Andrew Yang, and making such wonderful, wonderful friends throughout my campaign. But I also realized in Fort Myers that it also has its demons. While running, I faced being threatened by having my tires slashed, political signs destroyed, misrepresentations, and that ever-present glass door, and the inability of access to certain places due to that good old boy network. Just because you can't see it does not mean it doesn't exist. I believed in what I was doing and my purpose. I didn't join the mayor's race until mid-year, yet I earned enough votes in the primary to singe the hairs on the back of my opponent's neck. That told me people were listening. On June 1st, 2020, I wrote a guest opinion in the news press, a call for unity and justice in response to George Floyd's murder. As a mother of 2 Black sons, I could not be silent. I quoted Martin Luther King at that time, "How long will justice be crucified and truth be buried? How long will prejudice blind the vision of men?" That particular question was posed over 55 years ago. And at the time of George's death, it still went unanswered. And I thought, if not now, when? The year 2021 brought in a new day, a new president-elect, and our first female woman of color president. However, on January 6, 2021, this nation was faced again with the question of how long will justice be crucified and truth be buried? How long will prejudice blind the vision of men? I cried and I prayed for my children and grandchildren and those unborn, because I never thought I may be leaving this world in more disrepair than when I entered it. But I had an epiphany that although I did not grow up during the segregation and Jim Crow, it is a part of my DNA, and that I was re-traumatized by what I saw, resulting in nightmares. I realized that the wounds were so deeply ingrained in my DNA that I didn't even recognize that they were there. Remember, just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. When you are able to recognize hurt, pain of others, to empathize, to be compassionate, we can be human. We have lost our humanity, but there's hope. That applies to the bullies in the schools, to the person who has his knee on a man's neck, a politician who knowingly spreads falsehoods, to those who would storm and desecrate a sacred building, seeking to kidnap and hang those that disagree with them, and kill those who were simply trying to serve and protect. Ladies and gentlemen, on January 6th, our better angels were suffocated by hate. To all of the women, men, children, and young progressive leaders out there, do not mute the voices of your better angels. Listen to them. We must teach our children what's right and just. Hate is a taught behavior. We are innately born to love and respect each other beyond race, beyond our differences, and most importantly, beyond our petty political alliances. So earlier I posed a question, if not now, when? The time is right now, and it is today. The time is now for women to have equal pay, for all people to have an opportunity for economic equality. Right now, we will purge the seeds of hate and transgressions of our past while recognizing and addressing the trauma of others so we can truly heal as people. Right now, we will acknowledge that Blacks will no longer be treated as 3/5 of a person. Right now, we will clear a path for anyone, man, woman, child, regardless of race, creed, gender, or sexual orientation, to have the right to reach their fullest potential. Right now, we will drive out the darkness of hate with the light of faith. I am a woman of faith. And right now, we will look to each other and say, join me in the fight for truth, justice, and leave the divisive just us behind. Our newly elected president and vice president cannot do it alone. As Chantel said earlier, they need each and every one of us to fight with them, become more civically involved, and vote the right people in place locally, statewide, and federally. Right now, we will have opportunity prevail evermore. We will have hope. Thank you, everyone, for being here, joining in on this discussion. And we seek hope. We seek a new future for our country and for our people. Thank you so much.
Jacquelyn, thank you so much for your inspiring words. You know, the words of all four of our speakers this morning, basically, to kind of drill down to one central message, is we have to be, as Councilwoman Bonk said, we have to be bridge builders, and we have to do this together. There are no political parties that deserve more credence than others. We have to put people over our political parties, because that's how we actually succeed, right? We have to understand that the values that we hold for us should be the values that we hold for everybody. And so I'm looking forward to our panel discussion later today. Jacquelyn alluded to the insurrection, the violent insurrection that we saw on January 6th in our nation's capital. And we will be talking about that during our panel discussion. And we'll also be taking questions from our viewing audience. So whether you are on our Zoom call now, or whether you're on Facebook Live, please make sure that you are asking us questions if you have questions for our speakers. We will be taking a musical interlude with Annie Wenz once again, because Annie is so inspiring. We've asked her to perform another song for us. So after Annie performs, we will be taking some questions, and then we'll go into our panel interview with another special guest, Rachel Bass. So Annie, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me once again, and for your amazingly inspiring speeches and big hearts and leadership. I sang something pretty and hopeful last time, but I wouldn't be honest if I didn't also say that we have some fighting to do. We have some good trouble to make. We have some scrapping to do. And as an activist performer, I don't always write pretty stuff. And this is kind of the other side of this is my country too. You know, there are more of us than there are of them. We have to remember that, and we have to rise up and speak out. I would add, and I will put in the chat when I'm finished, there are a bunch of us from around the country that do all these types of festivals and marches and events, and we got together during the summer and presented several concerts where we asked folks to share voting initiatives, and we got out the vote, and the concerts were called Sing, Vote, Sing, and we're going to be doing a celebration concert, I think on February 7th. We're just firming that up, and I will put it on the Women's March site. And so they spun and said they won, till some bought all their lies. They genuflected at his feet. He said, go there and rise. They sieged and stormed the people's house, defiled and spilled blue blood. But we the people took it back. We'll always rise above. And our flag was still there. The king sits in his castle, genuflecting on his gold, and he watched the bread lines circle as the meltdown unfolds. Talking lips say Armageddon's dangling by a thread, and we the people wonder if this table's got a head. And who are we to question? They question as they point us to a bag of crap and tell us it's a rose. And who are we to wave the red, white, and blue in question? Well, this is my country too. Oh, the foxes squirrel nuts away, then say, by God, they're gone. Then they do their cup and pencil bit along the Congress lawn. It's not hidden in an offshore bank, now trust me and believe. I fooled you once, I wouldn't twice, 'cause God is up my sleeve. Oh, we didn't mean this when we said less government. Bail out this last shell game and we'll find another dupe. Oh, who are we to wave the red, white, and blue in question? Well, this is my country too. They couldn't wait to build a pipeline on sacred native ground. Round up all the immigrants and drive them on the town they wanted. Busted unions, private schools, and holy freaking walls. As we marched and gagged, he spewed and bragged about his pussy calls. They're the smoke and they're the mirrors. We're the poor and we're the pawns. If they get the way, we'll live in boxes and we'll mow their lawns. They complain about socialism, but they can't describe the word. They're just puking back the drivel that the shepherd told the herd. Oh, close down every family planning clinic, then complain about the welfare moms, you hypocrite cynic. I am a patriot. I will question. Well, this is my country too. Oh, the haves get up at 5 a.m. and tally up their stuff. Catch a Hummer down to Wall Street, 'cause enough is not enough. But on their way they hear a sound they do not recognize. It's the laughing have-nots dancing underneath the simple skies. Oh, what are we missing, they question. Can we buy it for some trinkets and a kitchen full of soup? Oh, who are we to wave the red, white, and blue and question? Well, this is my country too. My country 'tis the sweet land of liberty. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to Ellis Island. Oh, this is my country too. This land is your land, this land is my land. Oh, we're sick and tired of their crapping. We went and took our country back. This land is your land, this land is mine. Oh, this is our country too.
I love that song, and I want to hear it again. And so I want to remind everybody on our Zoom call today and on watching us on Facebook Live that we are recording this. This will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Fort Myers, Women's March Fort Myers has a YouTube channel. So if you would like to hear that song again, I'm sure a lot of you would. And also the words of our inspirational speakers today. Go to our YouTube channel, and pretty soon we'll be uploading this recording there as well. So we will be taking some questions from the audience, and then we'll be getting into a panel discussion. But I do want to bring something up. March is National Women's History Month, and so Women's March Fort Myers is planning something on March 6th, Saturday, March 6th. So go to your calendars, your Google calendars, or your paper calendars that are on the wall. Circle that date, Saturday, March 6th, and reserve some time for us. Women's March Fort Myers will be having an event that day. We're not sure if it'll be in person or virtual. Certainly that depends on where we are in this community in Southwest Florida with the pandemic and with security issues. So stay tuned on our Facebook page. You can go to our website, womensmarchfortmyers.org, and keep up with everything that we're doing. But please save that date for us. And so now I will be going to questions that we have received. And we, Chantel, we actually had a question for you. So you will be first up. You said that you went away for a few years. You went to China, I think, and then you came back here. Can you comment on how, if at all, you felt that this community changed while you were away? And if you would remind us kind of when you went away and for how long you went away.
Okay, thank you for that question. I want to answer accurately, but I will say I left in 2006. That's when I graduated high school from North Fort Myers High, go Red Knights. And I came back as early as about a year and a half ago. So pretty significant amount of time. Of course, I had been back to visit during that time, but to me, it just seems like Aladdin, a whole new world upon returning, just the streets and everything that had developed. Now, I don't know how much change has taken place among certain communities that we would consider marginalized or perhaps the most vulnerable in our community. I don't know if people in who occupy those spaces and in those communities would also say, hey, our condition has changed drastically throughout the last 10 to 15 years. If we collectively are making more money, do we have better jobs? Do we have equal access and equal opportunity? I honestly cannot speak on that. As a high schooler, I simply was not paying that much attention.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. And yeah, I think that if we all kind of go back, I was in high school in the 1900s. And so I remember that when I was in high school, I certainly was not very socially or politically engaged. I was worried about what was going on in my very small bubble, right? And so I understand that as you age, as you kind of expand your horizons, you kind of see the world in a different way. And you had the opportunity to go away and come back. And we're so happy that you decided to come back to the community in which you grew up. One of the things that you mentioned was homelessness, Chantel. And this is a question that I really would like to pose to the other panelists. We have a large homeless population here in Southwest Florida. And certainly we need to acknowledge that this is an issue that we need to work on. But I would like to ask, so we have the other three speakers, and Chantel, I'm certainly hoping that one day I will have the opportunity to vote for you or to work on your campaign. But until then, we have three other amazing speakers with us that have run for political office, and one speaker that was recently elected. And so for these amazing women, I'd like to ask them, and I'll start with Councilwoman Bonk. Would you kind of talk about the homeless challenge? It's not a problem. It's one of the things that we have to solve as a community, right? So how do we help the homeless? What are the challenges that they face that perhaps we don't necessarily think about in our day-to-day lives? And how do we help these members of our community? So Councilwoman Bonk, can you address some of those?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think the biggest thing that we have to do is acknowledge that it is an issue. And I think one of the things that in my limited scope of influence that I'm trying to do is really understand all the moving parts with homelessness, from faith-based and nonprofit organizations over the years that I've been involved with, who have tried to address multifacets of it, from the housing issue to the addiction issue to the lack of job issue. I've learned so much in recent years. Couple of things. One, a lot of people who grew up in the foster system, over 80% of them, if there's not some kind of a structure or unit or foundation for them, they kind of age out of the foster system and end up in homelessness. Think about a foster kid who never landed for any long period of time. They've never been taught how to hold down a house. They've never been taught structure and order. They've never been taught schedule and routine. They've never been taught how to take care of this or that. They take whatever they can put in their backpack, and that's what they've had. And we expect them to just come out of that system and know exactly what to do. And that's an overwhelming thing to think about. And then you think about, well, let's give them housing. But if they've never been taught how to have a budget, if they can't keep a job, if they've got addiction, you can give them the house. How long are they going to be able to keep it, right? So there has to be a way to do a lot of this in tandem. There's housing. You also have to have programs available for them. Some of those programs take advantage of the homeless people, and we have to acknowledge that. We also have to look and realize these are people. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't care why you're homeless. If I can help, it's my obligation to help. And so I think we have to be able, as Southwest Florida, as a community, whether we're in the political sector or all of you all here, we have to be able to talk about this. It doesn't matter where the blame shifts or who could have done this or who should have done this. What can we do moving forward? How do we make a difference now? Because you get caught up in these committees and these task forces, and that's fine. I'm not negating those, but these folks need action now, and they need us to care about them now. I know there was an article on the news a couple weeks ago about the corner, the peddlers, whatever that you want to call them. And do you give them money? Do you not? Is it helpful to give them money? Is it not helpful to give them money? I think only you can answer that question for you. If I feel like I needed to give a homeless person money, it's none of my business what they do with it. If I feel like I'm supposed to give to them, if they go buy it for booze, if they go buy it to help get them out, of the homeless system, that's on them. And so I think some of those decisions are individual, and you've got to decide for you what you want to do. But for those who have a heart for those people, we have to be able to talk about solutions and stop talking about the blaming and what the problems are and how they got here. They're here, they're homeless. What are we going to do about it? So I think just having an open conversation and being able to check yourself and say, what is my role here? What is my responsibility here as it pertains to homelessness?
Thank you for those words. So yeah, you bring up something that's incredibly important. You spoke specifically about, as an example, people in foster care. But we know that the men and women and children that are on our streets are there for many, many different reasons. All right. There are mental health issues. There are certainly people that age out of foster care and may not have a home to go to. Right now, there are a lot of people who are homeless and may start to experience homelessness soon. Because of the ravaging effects of the mismanaged pandemic on our economy. And so we're going to have more and more people that will be coming into this. And some people on the streets right now may have been on the streets for years. Others, this may be their first time. And so certainly as a community, we have to come together to talk about those issues and to start coming up with solutions and understand that everybody that's out there, they're as unique as we are, right? So we have to understand their plight in kind of a unique way. One thing I would like to ask for Jacquelyn McMiller and Connie Bennett-Martin to comment on is, while you were running for office, what were your experiences or conversations with the people that you hoped to be your constituents about this issue? And I'll go to Jacquelyn McMiller first, and then Connie to you after that.
Thank you, Annisa. Well, everyone were concerned about the homeless situation. And I've fed the homeless for, if you've ever come from a Southern family, you know that there's always food that is left over. So during the times that we would have these big dinners and everything, I always made sure, and my mother made sure, that there was enough that we can go out and be able to share that. And I've taught my children that. And I think that learning that and teaching our children to show that empathy towards those people that have no homes. One of the first things that we need to do is acknowledge it. It's just like with any illness, you have to actually diagnose it before you can determine what the treatment is going to be. So once we acknowledge it, we can actually work on addressing the homelessness. Homelessness is multifaceted, and as you stated in this, it has mental health, addiction, breakdown of the family structure, job loss, and personal and national crises like this pandemic, which has caused the loss of the jobs. Now they cannot pay the bills, and therefore they're being evicted. And I've ridden around this city during this time of the pandemic and have seen places where you think that they are moving and there's furniture on the side of the road, and it's because people have been evicted and they have found themselves homeless. So just providing housing is not just the answer. This is providing job skills, ways that people can make money and make sure that it's long-term, but also being able to be economically sound. There has to be programs developed to address the traumas that have led to the homelessness, to actually be able to cure it. It can be done. All it takes is dedication. We have great minds that lead the city. And it doesn't take reinventing the wheel. At one point, Orange County was one of the most highest level of homelessness in the cities. And they've actually worked on that. Women, children on the street. So this is something that we as a city, but as leaders, that we could get together and work towards and absolutely find the cure of.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Connie, do you have any words about the homelessness and about homelessness in your constituents and how you had conversations with them about that?
Yeah, well, when I was out campaigning, one of the things that came across quite often was people were concerned because I'm in Ward 4 and we have an interesting mix of the haves and the have-nots. And of course, we all recognize, we all have seen that we have a homeless issue. And it was amazing to me how many people were genuinely afraid of what this meant for their neighborhood, what this meant for their community. And it was always the, can we send it somewhere else? And, you know, it was interesting to pose the question to them of, so this is the community, because a lot of the homeless is a community. And so this is a community, and do you want to move them then to your mother's backyard? Do you want to move them to your backyard, to your brothers or your sisters? No, let's go ahead and solve the problem for what it is. And it was amazing to me how many people had a very adamant view and had never taken the time to speak to anyone, to never taken the time to go downtown and go to Centennial Park. And, you know, if they were uncomfortable, why not just walk up and, you know, hi, how are you? Introduce themselves. I had an interesting situation where leaving the gym one morning, my girlfriend and I, we were walking out and there was an older gentleman that was sitting on a chair, and God bless Planet Fitness, because those young men working there let him come in because it was cold. And he had some problems and we couldn't figure out what it was. And we started walking out the door, and her and I both stopped after walking out the door and went, you know, we need to go find out what's going on. Something's wrong. And we talked to the person, and we made him not just some homeless person we were passing. He actually became a friend. Her and I worked together. We found out where the disconnect was, and we found a solution for him. And we were actually able to, because he was recently homeless. He didn't have his medications. He basically was thrown out with nothing. And when he was on the side of the road sleeping, he kind of got tossed unfortunately by the police, and all of his belongings ended up in the gully. So he pretty much just had the jacket he was wearing and a small bag of things in his hand. And but this is one of my brothers. So we met him and we talked to him. And Ken and I have actually become friends, and we call each other constantly to check on and see how he's doing. And we connected him with his family. I ask people that if you genuinely have that servant's heart and you're comfortable, go and meet someone. If we can all take a brother or sister that we want to take some responsibility for, and just ask how you can help. Just ask what they need. And it is amazing that sometimes asking what they need, all this gentleman needed was to be able to reconnect with his family, to find them, to reconnect and be there. Now he's getting the medical attention he needs. He's living with his daughter and his grandbabies. And all it took was that moment we walked out the door, that we didn't keep walking. We didn't turn away from him. We recognized him as one of our brothers and someone that we could do something for. And if we can all make that commitment to recognize that these are our brothers and our sisters, and that we can do something even small to let them know that they are, you know, we see them, we know them, we recognize them, we care. I think that in itself goes a long way. But as far as city and government, I think our city and our county is starting to come together to create programs, but it's a long journey. It didn't happen overnight. It's going to be a long process, and they're getting a few things in place. And I hope that they go back to funding the 26 social service programs that they cut a couple years ago, because those social service programs were important for these people, and they're important for our community. And I think that is something that we all need to recognize and advocate for, because mental health and housing assistance and veterans health, all of these things are so crucial in order for us to be, we're not a successful community if we don't have them.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So yeah, you saw the humanity in Ken and you extended your own humanity. And that's certainly things that we can do as individuals, but we definitely do need our elected officials to recognize that this is an issue, and social programs help those in every level of need, right? Like you don't have to be totally homeless to take advantage of a social program to then make sure that you are one step further away from being homeless. We do know that the mayor of Fort Myers, Councilwoman Bonk, the mayor of Fort Myers has created, I believe, a homelessness task force. Have you heard about that, or is there a possibility of you being able to get representation on that task force? Have you heard about that during city council meetings?
Sure. So at the last council meeting, the mayor did announce that he was going to be announcing the members of that task force next week. I don't know what the criteria is that went into that selection. I would hope, and I just commented back to someone on the Facebook Live, I would hope that those who are actually out serving daily in that community, working with the homeless day in and day out, would be selected to serve, as they are the ones who really know kind of what's going on, and not just people from the coalition or people who are just kind of looking at data, but people who are actually dealing with people night after night, day after day, and helping them find solutions and answers. So I unfortunately do not know what that criteria is, but I do know that task force is set to be named in the next week or two, I believe. Okay,
thank you. I will be asking one more question, and whomever of our panelists wants to answer, please do. This is again on the homelessness issue. This is something that really defines who we are as a community, right? We talk about equality, we talk about building bridges, we talk about making sure that we're the thermostats, we talk about making sure that we are the leaders of tomorrow. But certainly these people need help now. They need help from individuals, from nonprofit organizations, from faith-based organizations, and from our elected officials who form our government. So one of the things that is quite disturbing is the number of young people that are on the streets now, the number of youth. And is there anything that we can do? What can we do for the youth and people who don't necessarily have life experiences to help them navigate this very difficult world? What can we do to build up youth programs so that we can help those people specifically who need help and may not have necessarily the life experience or even just the savvy to be on the streets? How do we help them? How do we help them come out of this? It's tough, right, Chantel?
I think one of the things that we can do is to, as you mentioned, continue to support the programs that are currently working. I had the opportunity to work temporarily before COVID-19, of course, at the Quality Life Center. And I was able to see the impact that that center was having on youth in our community, not just the youth, but the entire family. And it was discouraging to see the city withdraw funding from not just the Q, but other nonprofit organizations at that time. Why would you take away money from programs that are working, that are keeping kids off of the streets, keeping kids out of trouble, keeping them out of the criminal justice system? And that is something that I think we went down to City Hall, we rallied, we gave speeches, we held signs, and we still walked away with a huge budget cut. At the time, we had to get rid of so many staff members, which means we had to close our doors to students who received a hot meal and homework help every single day at the Q. So I would say identify those programs that are currently working. There's no need to always reinvent the wheel, and make sure that our lawmakers, our legislators are doing right by those dollars, putting them where they work, putting them where they should be.
And can I add a tiny bit to that?
Absolutely.
And also, it's about you committing to do something. So, not everyone can stroke that big check for like Quality Life Center. That is one of my absolute favorites. They do so much for the community. It's not just children, it's not just adults. They do for at large for the community. And if you can't write that check to help support them, even a small check helps. But if you can't write that check to support them, you can give your time. There are so many organizations out there that are starving for volunteers, that you can lend your expertise, whether it's finance, teaching our young people about financial literacy is so incredibly important, so that they understand not to get themselves into debt just because a loan officer tells them, oh, you can afford a $300,000 home on your $600 a week income. We have to teach our youth things like financial literacy. And if you have the ability to go to one of these centers and volunteer your time and your expertise, that is as valuable, if not more valuable, than money.
The Q is an amazing organization, and Chantel, thank you so much for bringing that up. The Q is one of those organizations that brings people together, not only people of the community, but educators, leaders of today, leaders of tomorrow. It's creating leaders of tomorrow, and I agree 100% with you. It is programs like that that are immensely successful, that just need a little bit more help from funding agencies. They don't have to reinvent the wheel there. The Q is doing an amazing job. So yeah, I thank you for answering these questions. We do have to move on to our panel discussion. We have a lot of questions coming in now. So if we have time at the end, we'll take a few more, but I do want to move on. Before we do that, Jackie, one really quick question. There are a lot of people asking the name of the organization, the Uplift organization that you started. Would you let us know what the name is?
Oh, okay. Of course. It is Uplift, UPLIF. It's Urban Progressive Leaders Incubator Foundation. And it's specifically designed, and the mission is to, from high school, middle school, all the way up to, middle age. And we're utilizing those people who have been on this earth a little bit longer than others to be those leaders, to share the wisdom, to guide those people, those young people who want to lead, who want to have a voice. We have a lot of young children in high school today that are very active. I had a lot of volunteers on my team during my campaign, and they have a voice. They just need somewhere to go to give them guidance on how and where to use it. And that's the sole purpose of the foundation. You are welcome to contact me if you'd like to volunteer, to be a part of the program, if you have children that would love to be a part of the program. We are seeking those people who really want to be those game changers here in the city of Fort Myers, in Lee County, so we can work towards making a better future for everyone here.
Thank you for that. And so now we're moving on to a panel discussion. We all maybe can think back to the beginning of the year on January 6th, when we all woke up and all of our eyes were on Georgia. Our minds were on Georgia, right, on January 6th. We were waiting to see what would happen with the election in Georgia. There were two U.S. Senate runoff elections in Georgia, very close elections. And so for many people in the country, majority of the country, were looking to Georgia to see who would be in control of our Senate for the next 4 years. And so Rachel Bass was also in Georgia, and Rachel is with us today. And I'd like Rachel to talk to us about her experiences in Georgia, and specifically that day as her attention was on the election, and then all of us started to turn our attention to the insurrection happening at the nation's capital. So Rachel, would you?
Yeah, hi, and I'll just introduce myself really quick. My name is Rachel Bass, and I am the co-organizer of the local Showing Up for Racial Justice chapter, Surge, Southwest Florida. I'm also a Surge coach, so I'm helping some other chapters get started in Florida. We're up to 5 total now, which is exciting. And Surge basically works to get white folks involved in racial justice issues in our own communities, because that's where the problems are stemming from. So, oh, you can't hear me? Let me see if I can sit. I'll sit closer. So yeah, I was in Georgia. I had the good fortune to be hired by an organization called Seed the Vote, which coordinated with grassroots organizations on the ground in Georgia to send volunteers from places that have, more resources and more people active in volunteering. So we sent, I think the final number was 340 people to Georgia to knock on doors. The group that I was working with as Seed the Vote staff was Surge National. So I was working with Surge in Georgia. And we were contacting medium turnout voters in majority white rural communities in Georgia. Some of the people whose doors we knocked on had never had their doors knocked on before. In fact, I would say most of them had never had their doors knocked on. And yeah, so after the, getting the news that we did it, that Ossoff and Warnock had won the election. And another thing I just thought of is people kept saying we flipped Georgia blue, we flipped Georgia blue. And the truth of the matter is that Georgia has been blue. It's just there's just a lot of voter suppression there. So that was part of what we were working on. And yeah, quite literally, I was in Georgia still in the celebration mode. It actually a local reporter had called to interview me to talk about Southwest Florida's connection to Georgia and like what my work was there. And she said she was going to pitch the story and then she would call me back in a few hours, and she never called me back. And that's when I realized that, okay, there's this other story of the insurrection that's happening. That's kind of taking the momentum. Everybody's attention has turned to that now. And I think for a lot of people, it was, a shocking display of white supremacist violence, storming the Capitol, and there were the groups there like the Proud Boys and the people that we've been hearing about locally that are organizing. So we kind of knew this was coming, but didn't necessarily know it was going. I think people were ready for that to happen on election day, and then when it didn't, everybody kind of got a little bit more relaxed, and then all of a sudden, January 6th comes, and that's when everything kind of breaks loose. And so, so one of the things immediately that I thought of was the people that I had spoken to in Georgia. People that really have been feeling left out of the democratic process, people that feel like neither party represents their needs, neither party really cares about them, which is what I was talking to people about. And I was saying, I agree. I agree. I feel the same way. I don't feel like either party represents my interests. And I don't feel like that's prerequisite to be involved either. So I had wonderful conversations. I even talked to people that had voted for Trump and then were open enough to listen and have a conversation with me, that decided that they were going to support Ossoff and Warnock in the Senate race. So the idea that, as soon as the stuff started happening at the Capitol, the idea that this is sort of the lower class or like poor, Southern, like hillbilly rednecks that were storming the Capitol is sort of a false narrative that I was bracing myself for, because those are the people I was talking to. And those are the people that I come from. I come from Southern Illinois, a rural Southern background. The truth of the matter is we started finding out later that there were lawyers, there were, police officers, there were military members, there were, all of these people, like the people that, are business owners in Southwest Florida. Those are the people that were up there storming the Capitol. So that was one part of it. And then the other fear that came up right away was the fear that this was going to lead to a harder crackdown on protests, on you know, what they call like domestic terrorism bills, which, you know, history has just proven that we don't apply our laws equally. We just don't. So you know, the fear is that these sorts of legislation, which we actually have one right now in going through the process in Florida, HB 1 and Senate Bill SB 484, which is Ron DeSantis legislation that would increase some penalties for protesting. It really threatens everyone's First Amendment right. So I have a link to a letter writing campaign that I'm sharing in the chat and on Facebook right now. So if everyone wants to sign on to that, it would be super helpful. The other thing that the events in Washington, D.C. brought up for a lot of us were remembering over the summer the way the Black Lives Matter protesters were treated in Washington, D.C. And the stark contrast in, you know, who's allowed to behave in which way in the nation's capital. For example, and this is something that Jacquelyn McMiller pointed out yesterday as we were going over this, is like to make sure to mention the numbers. When I actually looked at the numbers, it was worse than I even realized. There were 52 arrests made related to the DC riots, 52, okay? On June 1st, one day of the Black Lives Matter peaceful protests that were happening in DC, 289 people were arrested. Throughout the course of the summer, 14,000 people were arrested related to the Black Lives Matter uprisings. That's, you know, that's a huge difference. None of us went up there and tried to kidnap Congress people. So, you know, this is a, like I said, it's I think for a lot of people to see this blatant display is shocking and unsettling in many different ways. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, that's the epitome of what's wrong in our social justice, right? Economic justice. There are people that see certain people of color and say or think that they have more opportunity or should have more access than others. And we the people, right, is the preamble to the Constitution. It's not we the parties, it's not we the corporations, it's not we the white people, although when it was written, that's what it meant. But as we strive for a more perfect union, we the people has to mean all the people, right? And so, Jacquelyn, I want to get your reaction to what you see, what you kind of saw on that day as well. January 6th, we saw a violent insurrection in our nation's capital. We saw the Confederate flag inside the White House. We saw a noose hanging outside of the White House. What were your reactions to that? And what would you say to people in your community and people outside of your community about what happened there that day?
Well, I kind of alluded to that during the introduction, and it still sticks with me because of the fact that, you know, you really don't realize that you've been traumatized. Sometimes it's a way of dealing with things. And even though we may not have went through it ourselves, what we've heard growing up as children, what our parents went through, listening to my grandparents and my parents who were civically active as well, during that era, you know, it sits deep within. And at that time on January 6th, when I saw it, I realized that I was more traumatized than I ever really thought I could have been. However, it also told me that a few days later, it told me that we do have hope. I still have hope that we can make this country a better union. What I saw on January 6th was a group of people that wanted an opportunity to act out. They were waiting for an opportunity to act out. And we had a leader that fed that fear, fear of being taken over by another race. This country was built on indigenous people, on the slaves that have worked hard to build this country. And it seems as though what's so upsetting about it is it seems as though people want to forget about that. We as a people are very forgiving people. As Black people, we forgive very easily. Otherwise, there would have been constant uprisings, because when we saw Rodney King, when we saw George Floyd, and it has a tendency to continue. We should never have to see that again. And I've told people before that the Rodney King incident, if we had done what we needed to do at that time, there would never have been a George Floyd incident. Chantel said it best. We are not going to wait. We shouldn't wait for another incident to happen to speak out, to be activists, to stand up for one another. We need to pass along the goodness of what we know innately that we have. God does not make mistakes, and he made us perfectly. And that means that he made us perfectly to know that we should love one another as we love our children, as we love our neighbors. And it doesn't matter what color skin that we have. However, when we allow ourselves, when we allow our better angels to be muffled, that's when those people come out, that hate comes out. And I know that I have a voice. I listen to my better angels. I know everyone on here that is participating in this have those better angels to have a voice to speak out louder than those who have spoken on January the 6th. So yeah, it is continuing. We're healing, but we have to continue to let people know and let it be known that this is not acceptable. It will not be acceptable. And the major moment is going to be seeing justice be followed out with this, to advise everyone that participated in this that we will not tolerate it. It will not be tolerated. We cannot do this anymore. We need to leave this world in a better place for our children.
Thank you. Thank you. We absolutely do. And we need to make this world a better place for us as well, right? So that we can actually raise our children and our grandchildren, and in my case, my nieces and my nephews, raise them and show them what the world should be. It's crazy that what happened on January 6th, for some people, it was such a surprise that this could happen in our nation's capital, that these violent insurrectionists, that these domestic terrorists could actually make it inside the Capitol, right? During the Black Lives Matter protests, there was never any danger of any of the peaceful protesters being able to break into the capital of this nation. But on January 6th, those domestic terrorists were able to get in. And now we are learning that there are some elected members of Congress that were actually helping them make their way through those halls. One of the things that I want to ask about is, how do we kind of balance this ideal? I think all of us on this call understand that equality, that seeing people as our equals and making sure that everybody, regardless of color or sexual orientation or faith, making sure that everybody has equal opportunity. I think everybody that's joining us today, we understand that, we get that, we agree with that, we want that. How do we get there when we are faced with such violence, right? How do we kind of balance that fear for our lives and our homes and our families with what we need to do to step up and step out to speak out? How do we make sure that we are having an effective change? And how do we overcome that fear of, oh my gosh, this is going to hurt me in some way? Does anybody have an answer to that? I mean, I know we've all kind of thought about, well, if I go out there, there's a possibility of retribution. Do we have an answer? How do you guys deal with it? Connie?
I'm probably not the best example to give this because I tend to be the one that will, grab my soapbox and get out there and scream and get my voice heard, regardless if I have others with me. But for those that are genuinely concerned about your safety and about, not being that one voice out there, that was the whole point of one of the things that I had said was get together with like-minded people and form that group of friends that you can count on, that when you see something that you get up and you speak up. And when you start associating and being around more like-minded people, I know we see it all on our Facebook pages. Some people's Facebook pages are flooded with pro-Trump people. Some are flooded with, pro-Biden people. But when you start associating and spending your time working towards what you believe in, you will find yourself congregating with groups and you will find that you have others to share that voice with. And I think it's really important to, make sure that, yes, we protect ourselves and yes, we don't go somewhere that we shouldn't go. But, I'm also one of those people that if I see something, I say something. And if I see something happening in public, I do kind of put caution to the wind because I will be that person that will step up in the middle of, when I see somebody being abused, being picked on, being treated poorly. And, I tend to do that. I don't always recommend it for everybody, but if sometimes it takes not just that, I believe in there's something called the first follower. I don't know how many people are familiar with it. But at a concert, when you see one person dancing, you're like, oh, that crazy person dancing by themselves. But that second person that speaks up, that second person that goes to dance gives legitimacy to that first. And soon you have all of us dancing together at the concert. It's not just that one crazy person dancing by themselves, which is usually me. But you have to get it started. And when you see somebody speaking up, if it's something you're passionate and you believe about, jump in and join them, get with them. Find ways of coming together, find ways of having like-minded people come to the city council or to the county commission meetings and raising up your voice together. There is always, just like when you're going to church, there is always, when you lift up your voices together, you get heard.
Thank you. So I do want to talk about the election last year, right? We were all focused on the election in one way or the other. Many of our esteemed panelists were running for office, but also a lot of us were working for the elections. And so we were all thinking about the top of the ticket, the presidential race, but certainly there were so many other races on the ticket, so many other opportunities for people to represent us in our communities. And so for Councilwoman Bonk, I do have a question. You ran in a nonpartisan race, and so a lot of the issues that you deal with in your day-to-day elected office are really nonpartisan, right? These issues of water quality and affordable housing and homelessness, that doesn't say we're going to give one party better access than another party. It shouldn't say we're going to give one group of people better access than another. So how do you overcome our partisan divides are almost tribal, right? Like it's for some people, it's who they are. How do you overcome that? How do you make sure that your constituents know that you're there for everybody, but also that the issues you're working on are really not partisan issues? They are community success issues.
Yeah, good question. And I think, I always have to remind myself that it is about people. It's not just about an issue and what side of it are you on. It is about, and not just as a council person, just as a member of this community, when I am talking with people, it is listening to their experiences. It is hearing their backgrounds. It is understanding where they're coming from, because it gives me a broader scope with which to look through the lens of whatever the topic is that the council is dealing with or voting on, to determine, okay, I may have individual opinions. I have lots and lots of opinions, but the hope is you probably won't often hear a lot of them, because in my role as a council person, I was hired to represent all of the people of the ward with which I was voted for. I was not voted to represent this party or that party. And I was raised conservative Republican. My dad was a pastor, but we were always taught to question and to challenge everything. And I have Republicans in my family, I have Democrats, I have independents. And about 12 years ago, I just said, both of these parties are just screwed up, right? Nobody wants to listen anymore. And it wasn't a representation of me. And I can remember when I first said, okay, let's throw my hat in the ring for this council seat. And at first, when people asked me about it, I said, I have no desire to do this. I am not political in any way. I don't want anything to do with that. And someone reminded me that is exactly why you need to run, because there's too much of this side and this side. And I had people tell me, oh, if you would just change your party and be a Republican, we could get you this and we can get you that. Or if you would change to be a Democrat, we can get you this and we can get you that. And I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. There are great people on both sides. There are great people in the independent world. But you cannot be so hung up on a party affiliation that you refuse to be open to hear, that you refuse to be open to see the people with which the decisions you're about to make impact them, and understanding the weight that that carries. And so I think for any of the issues that we are facing, it is not about a party. And although much of what we're talking about is what took place on January 6th, and coming from, one specific party, I have to keep reminding myself that that is not all of the world. That is a group of stupid, idiotic people who chose to disrespect a landmark of our country, who chose to take democracy in their own hands. And although they won the battle, I will not let them win the war. And I have to remember that the biggest weapon, as Jacquelyn mentioned, in this war is hope. And it is openness, and it is kindness, and it is understanding. Just because that's what I saw does not mean that is the representation of the whole. And the impact you can make is each and every single one of you on here, and the world around you, the people you connect with each and every day, the people you talk to, letting them see something different. As much as I want to go and respond to things on Facebook, whether I was in this office or not, how many times do you have to hit the delete? You're like, oh, I can't say that. Do you have to say it just because you can? Or can I have a different exchange in a more meaningful platform, a more meaningful way with an individual that will allow for us to begin to come together? And it happens one conversation at a time. It happens one person at a time. The rhetoric and all the stuff that you hear in the media, the rhetoric that you may hear up on a dais, how can I change the world around me each and every day with the people I come in contact with, and what is my responsibility to do so?
Thank you, Councilwoman. You make a good point about people not feeling represented by either party. And so I do want to go back to Rachel and ask her a question. So you, Rachel, said that when you were in Georgia and you were working the Senate elections, the runoff elections, you were speaking to people in primarily rural areas of Georgia that potentially didn't have a higher socioeconomic class. They were just kind of making ends meet maybe, and they felt like they weren't represented either. No one had ever knocked on their doors. What were those conversations like? What were what was their outlook on how either, how this election could affect them? You were knocking on their door to convince them or ask them to vote for specific people. But what was their outlook? Did they have hope that things would change for them or things would get better? What were those conversations?
Well, part of what I was doing in Georgia was unique in that it wasn't just direct like voter outreach type of canvassing. We were actually doing more deep listening canvassing, and the whole purpose of the organization that I worked for is to it was created to defeat Trump and build our movements, and then flip the Senate and build our movements. So we were also talking to people about what was going on there in their communities, and trying to start planting the seeds, I guess, of like some ongoing community involvement there in these rural areas. There, what I found was that it, which is similar to what has already been touched on, is like when you go and knock on somebody's door, it's a risky thing. It can be a little bit, unsettling, whatever. But if you take the time to actually listen to someone before you start trying to persuade them to do something, it changes the entire dynamic. People told me their life stories, and more than one person cried. Like, it's just, these complete strangers that don't know me from anything, that purposely live out in the country, like to avoid this kind of thing, probably. Once we're able to like connect to each other's humanity and really listen to what somebody is saying to you, like oftentimes I am chronically without health insurance because my husband lost his job, which we had always had health insurance through, and we fall into that gap where we make too much for Medicaid and not enough to pay for insurance. So, and when I share that with some of my friends who are Democrats, they're always immediately ready to point out, like, well, that's because Florida didn't do the Medicaid. Yeah, I know that. I know that. However, did you hear what I just said? I don't have health insurance. Like, listen to that part first. Listen to the person, listen to what their struggles are, connect with them on that level. And the other, and that was, it wasn't a difficult type of conversation. I mean, people are people that have been ignored want to be heard. So that's what we were able to do there in Georgia. And just want to mention that we were just one of like several grassroots organizations that was on the ground in Georgia that has been laying this groundwork for years for Georgia to swing blue this time, and for the Senate runoff race. So and led by Black women who are in the fight, in the struggle, because their lives and their children's lives literally depend on it, like this minute. Doing that hard work so that the rest of us could come, at the kind of cross that finish line, just a little bit of an extra nudge across the finish line. So the way that those grassroots organizations came together and went on after a common goal and succeeded, that's where I find a lot of hope in that. I find a lot of hope in the conversations that I had with people who were feeling disenfranchised and overlooked and discarded by society, basically. In the hope that they were willing, like, okay, some of them, not all, I didn't convince everybody to vote, which was fine. That was, I respect people's right to not do it too. But, the people that were willing to go ahead and try it one more time, one of the biggest parts of that, I think, was the COVID relief. People are hurting, people are struggling, and the way that our government has handled, COVID relief, and COVID in general is just, it's inhumane and horrible. So, and the grassroots organizing part is just so important. This happens every election. There's like this big, huge flurry of activity, and then people just kind of go back to their whatever brunch, I guess. And instead of doing that, I would like to urge people to get involved with grassroots organizations. Surge is out there, Surge Southwest Florida. There are others too that are working on issues in our communities steadily, without, like, regardless of who the president is. So yeah, those are people fighting back against injustice, even in small ways. That's where I get hope from.
Thank you, Rachel. And I do want to ask Chantel about her kind of experience with her group of friends, and you are younger than certainly the other panelists, and much younger than me, and so your life experience has been very different. Certainly the way that we've moved through life has been very different. But on January 6th, everybody stopped and kind of reassessed where we are in our country as a people, and how Black people and brown people are treated, how women are treated, how we could see these domestic terrorists, many of whom are definitely white supremacists in our nation's capital. And so Chantel, when you saw that, and with your hopeful outlook on things and your ability to organize, what did you start to think about was your role in how we actually bring hope back into the situation? How do we move forward from here? How do we make sure that everybody is represented regardless of race and regardless of socioeconomic class? And how do we make sure that we start that in our communities? Just a couple of questions for you.
Okay, yeah, I'll try to summarize it for you. So how I feel about what happened on January 6th, it was re-traumatizing, especially here in Lee County. We worked extra hard to make sure that we maintained the peaceful protest because we knew that there were some who were committed to a certain narrative in order to undermine the overall statement of Black Lives Matter, right? So they would focus on the looting and the rioting. So it was not necessarily surprising to see the hypocrisy that took place on that day, where you had police officers stopping to take selfies with some of the domestic terrorists and allowing the barricade, moving the barricade so that they could enter in. It is not surprising. However, one of the things that I say because had that happened to any Black Lives Matter protest, there is no doubt about it, we would have been absolutely slain right there on the steps of the US Capitol. But what the word that I have is steadfastness. Be ye steadfast, keep at it. We cannot become prisoners to the events of this time as if our ancestors and those who came before us have not seen much worse. When you look at the situation with Black Americans, we gather hope based on the events of the past. So my grandmother and my great grandparents had to live through slavery and Jim Crow. And what got us to this point where we are now, this point of absolute imperfection, is the word hope. We could have given up back then. And as Jacquelyn mentioned, we are expected to be a very forgiving people, despite the hypocrisy that is shown to us on a day-to-day basis. And I believe that faith, I believe the love among the culture, even though we can get frustrated with our own people sometimes, I think that love is what keeps us in the fight. I don't have children myself, but I have a nephew. I have a niece. I remember the day that they announced that George Zimmerman was not guilty. I was changing my nephew's diaper in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's when the Black Lives Matter movement started. And I remember just looking at him and just feeling we really are worthless to so many people in this country. But I have to look at my grandparents, the example that my grandmother left with us. She persevered. My grandmother told us stories how she used to clean for a white family, and at the end of the week they would take all of the food and the scraps that they had not eaten and they would put it in a bag and give it to her as if it's some sort of prize. So we have come a long way. We still have a long way to go, but stick with it. Be ye steadfast. That's my answer.
That's exactly what we needed to hear in this moment, in this time. We have to recognize that as a community, we have to move forward together and we have to support each other. So if Chantel is hurting, then I am hurting. And if I am hurting, then hopefully someone will be there to stand up for me. That's how we move forward. So our path forward in unity and equality and humanity must start with our actions. And so I urge you to stay with Women's March Fort Myers. We are about to wrap up this session this morning, but please keep your eyes on Women's March Fort Myers. Keep your eyes on our Facebook page. We have a lot more to give to this community so that we can come together and make sure that the person that we just elected in the White House, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that's not the end. It is the beginning, and they have to be held accountable for everything that they campaigned on. Our local officials need to be hearing from us on what we expect. Our state representatives, our state senators need to hear from us. Our state legislature in this state meets in March. They don't start meeting until March. So your state representative, your state senator, they are still in your community. You need to find out who they are and make sure that they understand that you want to continue to keep your First Amendment rights. We know that House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 484, the anti-protesting bill that Governor DeSantis wants to get passed, is actually, it's attacking our First Amendment rights. Many of the things that that House bill would make illegal are already illegal in our criminal codes. It doesn't do anything to protect us, but it does a lot to take away our ability to speak for ourselves and peacefully assemble. So I want to thank our panelists this morning. Ryleigh started us off with an amazing rendition of America the Beautiful. We had amazing panelists like Connie Bennett-Martin, Jacquelyn McMiller, Chantel, Rhodes. We had Councilwoman Darla Bonk with us, and of course the music of Wenz. And then we were also very fortunate to have Rachel Bass join us for our panel discussion and her experiences on Georgia. So we are running over, so I'm going to wrap it up, but I want to make sure that all of you are circling your calendars for March 6th. We will be having an event on March 6th, Women's March Fort Myers. We don't know what that will look like at this point, but you will hear from us because you are here now and you heard from us about this rally. So on behalf of the board of Women's March Fort Myers, I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to remind you that you are part of the solution. And as Chantel said, we have to remain steadfast. So have a wonderful rest of your day. Think about something you can do to help your community. Make sure you know who your elected officials are and make sure you get in touch with them about the issues that matter most to you. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.